Speaking of brilliant political leadership, Peter Dutton, hats off, full cheers to Peter Dutton for the strong stance he's taken this week. As the clip we just played you of Donald Trump, this exactly the same sentiments. I'll be very, very clear here. This is not a question of being anti-Muslim. This is not a question of being racist. This is not a question of being anything other than a leader of this country putting the safety of the community first and foremost. We're talking, of course, about Peter Dutton's call for a temporary suspension on people coming from the war zone of Gaza into this country. Labor are bringing close to 3,000 people in, granting them temporary visas, bringing them into the country. Peter Dutton has said, no, we don't want this. We must put a halt to this. And it's just been, and the reason is very, very clear and simple. If you are in any doubt, it is the protection, particularly of the Jewish community of Australia, but not only the Jewish community of Australia, when we have clear and unequivocal evidence that unfortunately we have not the vetting processes in place to guarantee that people coming from Gaza do not hold Hamas sympathies. And in fact, Michael Burgess told us it doesn't even matter if they do. Now, this is insanity, Rita.
But it is absolutely insanity. And the attacks against Peter Dutton on this issue, whether it's coming from the media, whether it's coming from the activist class or coming from the likes of Zali Steggall and Sarah Hanson-Young and Tanya Plibersek and the rest of Labor, including the Prime Minister, are utterly unhinged. They have gone down the racism route. We had Zali Steggall on Sky News doubling down on this racist rhetoric, trying to paint this policy as inherently racist. I don't know how a geographical
let's
region
have a quick listen to
can be considered
Zali's,
racist.
Let's have a quick listen, Rita, to Zali, then we'll go to James.
Stop being racist.
Leader of the opposition
is a description of language being racist and unparliamentary remark.
The policy proposed by Peter Dutton and the coalition is racist.
Well, this sort of feels a lot like The Voice all over again, you know, where as soon as you know the Conservatives come out with a policy they don't like, they scream that it's racist. Well, of course not. It's not about racism at all. It's about keeping out a population that has huge sympathy for Hamas and the October 7th attacks. But the bigger story here this week is not necessarily Zali Steggall, which was a lot of sound and light there, but the real story was Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and the way that he stitched up and reworded what Mike Burgess said about whether or not everybody, well, essentially the long and the short of it is that Albanese verbaled ASIO and said that everybody was being checked, when they said, no, not everybody is getting the full suite of checks, which, of course, that's Albanese trying to say, oh, no, everybody who comes in here, you know, they have been going through the whole vetting process. Well, that's a nonsense. And we know it's a nonsense because you come from any other country, there's a government that you can check with who these people are, what their record are, what their, if there's any red flags. There are ways that they can know some people are involved with Hamas, but, not everybody. But the thing is, too, an awful lot of people who are able to get out of Gaza, they're able to get out of Gaza because they've got money. And you don't have money in Gaza if you are not in one way or another connected with something that is, a Hamas enterprise. So there's a lot of concern around this.
The problem is deeper than that, because we've got the ASIO boss, Mike Burgess, saying that if you've got sympathy towards Hamas, it's not a deal breaker. I think in the minds
unbelievable.
In the minds of most Australians, it is a deal breaker. And I think on this issue in particular, Peter Dutton is very much representing the views of mainstream majority Australia. Of course, the media, activist class, the left are absolutely in uproar about it. I think he's going to get the Tony Abbott, Donald Trump treatment going forward.
Of course he is, but there's another important point here. And this is the way in which domestic immigration politics is affecting our migration policy and eventually, potentially, our national security. All of these frontbenchers in Western Sydney from the Labor Party, talking about Tony Burke, who's now the Homeland Affairs Minister, Jason Clare, a lot of other big names. All of these seats have large Muslim populations that are very sympathetic to Gaza. So what's happening here? Let's be really clear. Labor is pandering to the Muslim vote in these Western Sydney seats, and they're playing politics with our security.
I